This video is the 6th video in the complex number set of videos, and in this video we're going to be looking at the conjugate, which I like to refer to as the hat. The complex conjugate of a number is found by changing the sign of its imaginary part. For any complex number z, which is a plus bi, its conjugate is denoted by z hat, which is I like to call it, but z with a line on the top, is defined as a minus bi. I'm hoping you can see here that the only thing is different between z and z hat is that the sign in front of bi has changed. Where it was once positive, it's now negative. The most important thing to note though is it's only the sign of the imaginary part that's changed. The real part remains the same. If the complex number was a minus bi, then the conjugate or z hat of that number would be a plus bi. So whatever the complex number is, to find the conjugate, you just change the sign of the imaginary part. This is best explained by going through a few examples. It says in example 6.1, find the complex conjugate of the following complex numbers. In part A, we have minus 3 plus 7i. The complex conjugate is always found by changing the sign of the imaginary part, meaning that this would end up being minus 3 minus 7i. In part B, we have 1 minus 5i, and again, changing the sign of the imaginary part, we will be left with 1 plus 5i. For C, we have 8 minus 2i. Changing the sign of the imaginary part, we will get 8 plus 2i. In part D, we have 3i. Here, the real part of the number is 0, so it's almost like having 0 plus 3i, but we'd never need to write the 0. But to get the conjugate of this complex number, we just change the sign of the imaginary part, meaning we'd end up with minus 3i. Finally, E, we're looking for the complex conjugate of 2. Now, 2 has no imaginary part, and the complex conjugate is found by changing the sign of the imaginary part. But because there's no imaginary part here, we can't find the complex conjugate, so it would just stay as 2. That's all the complex conjugate is. The most important thing to remember is when you need it, you just change the sign of the imaginary part of the complex number. That brings this video to a close.